the parking ticket with my name and his license plate. The ticket was tucked under my wiper so politely it felt like a favor. Yellow paper, black print, the city's crest like a shrug. Violation: none. Amount due: $0. In the space where a fine should live, the attendant had typed a message the system clearly wasn't designed to hold. For Jonah. Under it, in the comments line that usually says something about street sweeping, there was a license plate number I knew from mornings I pretended not to notice. 8ZVJ 214, and a time 8:10, and below that, cramped and darker as if the pen had leaned in, P3 spot 47. If you still want the truth. D. I lock doors for a living. I like the way a cylinder tells you the truth if you stop asking for drama. My days smell like brass and graphite. I clean keyways with the patience that comes from knowing a millimeter counts. I live with Marcus, who designs exhibitions for a museum that wants to be loved on Wednesdays. We've been together 5 years, which is long enough to know where the good bowls are, and to have retired the word always except for tea and the recurring joke about how our kettle prefers theater to boiling. It was 7:52 when I found the ticket. The garage that matched the plate number belonged to a hotel 2 blocks from the museum, the one with mat elevators and the lobby that learned kindness for an hour every night. Marcus had said he'd be late the evening before, budget dinner, donors, the keynote with the better hair. He'd come home smelling like cedar, which the museum doesn't stock. I wanted to believe him the way you want a door to stay a door, not a speech. Brass in my pocket felt like a plan that needed less courage than confrontation and more truth than patience. P3 smelled like tires and rain that wasn't ready yet. The concrete columns held their breath. Spot 47 held the silver sedan I'd watched from our window glide away on nights I told myself were just nights. He stood beside it with his hands in his pockets, which is the body's way of telling a room it's willing to be sentenced. Dylan. Taller than the last time I'd mapped him to his social media proportions. Hair that had started the evening disciplined and embraced the second drink. He wore a blue shirt open one button beyond polite, and he smelled like cedar and the last hour of a decision. "You came," he said. He didn't sound triumphant. Relief, maybe, like someone who had mispriced something and survived. "You typed my name into a fine," I said, "because I prefer accuracy to banter. That's creative." "I write labels for a living," he said. "I'm trying to stop misusing nouns." He lifted the ticket as if to swear on it. "If you didn't want to be here, you could have crumpled this and called me a coward in your head. If you did, I figured you deserved a space that didn't lie." He was the man from the left side of Marcus at openings, the one with the scarf that made donors feel like they were getting away with something. We had said hello twice, the polite kind you say when one of you is attached to a face in the other person's house. "How long?" I asked, because cleaning a cut beats admiring it. 8 months, he said, and his mouth didn't pretend the number was a friend. It started with rain and an elevator and phrases nobody should use without water on the table. I tried to end it twice. He sent me a picture of your breakfast and a complaint about the museum's lighting grid. I wrote okay. Then I wrote nothing for a week. Then I wrote something unhelpfully kind. "And why me now?" I said, watching the door to the stairwell split its own reflection in the polished concrete. "Because you lock doors correctly," he said. "And because you are the person who has to carry this no matter what I pretend bravery looks like." He stepped closer without closing the distance and stopped an inch from my wrist. The question of that inch made my skin write a sentence my ethics would have to edit. He did not touch me. He looked at my mouth the way men look when they are trying to tell the truth, and their bodies offer translation. The garage hum turned into something that had the gall to be erotic for a second. I smiled without humor and reached for the bottle of water I'd brought because ritual matters when rooms want to make you into something you won't like in the morning. "Drink," I said, handing him one. "Try not to mistake my courtesy for virtue." He laughed once like a man who hates that he has taste. He drank. We leaned on the concrete column the way you lean on facts. The time on my phone obeyed itself toward 8:10. The elevator doors opened with the whisper of good hardware, and Marcus walked out wearing the expression he keeps for donors who need to be flattered into accuracy. He saw me, saw Dylan, saw the distance, saw the water, saw his license plate on a piece of paper in my hand, saw the bed that wasn't in the room but had opinions anyway. He closed his mouth and then opened it because silence is only noble for a minute. "Okay," he said softly, and I loved him for putting the volume where it belonged. "You gave him my name to attach to your evening," I said, setting the ticket on the car hood because tangible things deserve flat surfaces. "The least you can do is recognize me now." "I cheated," he said, and the words felt like screws finding their threads. No rhetoric, bless him for that. I told myself it was weather. I told myself home is a noun that survives rain. I called newness improvement. I got lazy with the person I say I love. I confused applause for permission. "And me?" I asked, because it is always the impolite question and always the right one. "What did you tell yourself about me to make this make sense?" "That you are patient in the way locksmiths are patient," he said. "That you pour water before you pour a sentence. That you prefer repairs to finales. I used your virtues like a passport." Dylan had retreated a step, not dramatically, just to bring the door into his periphery the way decent men do when they're planning to leave. He held his cup and did not perform not drinking it. He watched my face like a reader who knows the author hates being caught showing off. "I can leave," he said, "not as theater, as information." "Not yet," I said, and surprised both of us. The city deserves to see three men be adults for 5 minutes. The hum of the garage became a choir of cooling engines. Marcus looked at me with the face I fell for, and with the face that had learned to be admired in rooms I don't want to pay for. He didn't reach. He has learned that reaching at the wrong moment writes a contract your wrists will regret. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. The courage it takes to put your desire behind a verb like that is unsexy and real. "You'll sleep on the not guest couch," I said. "You'll end this without complimenting him. You'll tell me twice next week what this was, once with museum cleverness, once with small words. I will decide what my hands can hold without lying to my wrists." "I'll do that," he said. He meant it the way doors mean it when they close well. Dylan exhaled as if an elevator had promised to arrive after all. He came near, lifted his hand that last inch toward my neck, and stopped there long enough for the room to decide what kind of story this would be. My body answered. Bodies aren't owned by morals. He lowered his hand with the kind of restraint that is more erotic than theft because it refuses to make a souvenir of you. He looked at Marcus the way men do when they have done something they hate and choose accuracy anyway. "I'm leaving," he said, not a flourish, a choice. He pressed the elevator button and stepped in without waiting for either of us to justify him. The doors closed with a sound I've trusted since childhood. I didn't move. Marcus didn't either. We stood in the garage as if we had been hired to do something useful with air. "I'm not leaving tonight," I said. "We're walking home without touching. We're waiting at crosswalks because old legs and stupid nights both deserve seconds. You'll sleep on the couch. We'll decide in daylight what we can keep." He nodded. He did not cry. I still love him for that. The walk home was a city in discipline. At one light he reached in instinct when a cyclist cut the curb too close. His palm hovered near my hip like a question my back already knew the answer to. I didn't step into it. A man is allowed to save his future using the most boring tools available. He slept on the couch like somebody who understands that blankets are not apologies but they help. In the morning he made tea and left the kitchen like a person who had remembered that silence is only noble for 2 minutes and then becomes an excuse. I tuned a baby grand in a sunroom where a family argued softly and apologized correctly. The D above middle C refused and then complied, and I forgave a machine for being itself. He ended it. He stood in a lobby that sells permission and told a man who knows his own beauty that beauty isn't policy. He came home smelling like nothing, which is the cologne of adults. He told me what they had been in 2 languages, and the small one hurt and helped. He said he had liked being 2 men because it let him outsource work to the wrong room. He said he had confused electricity for architecture. He said he would be 1 person if I let him do the work. I let him. You are allowed to disappoint an audience if you save a kitchen. He slept on the couch for 6 nights and learned the shape of our bedroom door from a distance. On the 7th he came to bed, and without speeches, we relearned lazy precision, the mouth version of a hinge settling back into its frame after someone has oiled it. Erotic exists without being an order. It can choose repair. Dylan sent one text on a Thursday at noon. "Thank you for letting me tell the truth with the lights on." I wrote, "Try it in rooms that don't adore you." He didn't reply, which was the second decent thing he did. Work became honest. I repinned a stubborn lock on a townhouse the city had decided mattered for tax purposes and told the owner patience beats force. I cut a skeleton key for an old bookstore and refused to admire my own romance about it. I watched a kid in a denim jacket stop himself from lying to a friend and felt unreasonably proud of a stranger. A week later, I saw Dylan outside the museum. He looked smaller, or maybe my anger stopped holding him up. He said hello and didn't try to hold my afternoon hostage. He didn't smell like cedar. We stood under the awning long enough to absolve the weather of responsibility. He looked like a man who had survived a decision, which is not nothing. Marcus and I adjusted the frame of our days. We put 2 glasses down before 3 sentences instead of 1. We put our hands on each other less, and then better. We invented a rule about sleeping with phones in another room and pretending to be bored on purpose together when our bodies wanted to climb out of ours. We stopped giving the kettle the authority to decide our volume. Here's the part no one writes because it sells fewer clicks. Wanting him stayed. It lived in my skin like a song memory, and I didn't make it a god. I let it pass through me like whether the building had learned to withstand. I am not noble. I am the man who can lock your door 3 times a day in rain and still ask the hinge if it needs something. If another ticket wedges under my wiper with my name and his plate, I will bring water. I will sit on the hood and be uninteresting. If heat arrives, I will let it exist without delegating my next hour to it. If a hand goes up toward my neck, I will let that inch be a country whose border I control. I will keep cutting keys for small doors and pretending it matters because it does. And when I slide a new cut into an old cylinder and feel the pins rise in order, feel the plug give, feel the whole mechanism agree that the right shape can pass without force, I will think about the night we refused to publish a finale and chose repair instead, in a garage that told the truth louder than we did.